I got it. Just Michael Bohn here with MMA Junkie, joined by the greatest fighter of all time, Chael Sonnen. Chael, how are you today? I'm doing great. Thank you, Mike. Don't you owe me an apology? Is that what this is? Did you bring me on publicly to apologize? You know, and you should just improve future actions that you're going to do to me. You should literally publicly apologize for future grievances and indiscretions that you're going to do against me. I'm glad you had the courage to do this publicly. That I do appreciate.
That was a great impression. You said it all, Chael. Are we good now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I have one favor. Yes.
Favor.
All right. At some point in the interview, okay, I'm doing the Ultimate Fighter with this guy called DC. And the hardest problem I'm having, DC stands for Daniel Cormier. And he used to be a fighter. This guy was, and he was good. He was good with the takedowns and such. He wrestled out in college. If you could mention him, and this is the guy, this guy beat Pat Cummins. I mean, this guy is the real deal. Nobody knows who he is. Now, I will admit for you, I was misunderstood too. When Dana White asked me if I would come out and do the Ultimate Fighter Daniel Cormier, I guess I read the text quickly. I assumed I was coming in to coach Daniel Cormier. I had no idea they gave him a similar role. But when you get Craig Bersari and you get Candido and you get that real good production team to kind of edit around him, in spite of him being there, we can probably have something good. And Mikey, don't pretend this is the first time I've had to carry a show with Daniel Cormier.
Yes, you do one multiple times a week, as we know. And there's DC over there. For the people who don't know, there's a poster of him, UFC 187, with Anthony Rumble Johnson.
Was that a fight with Cummings?
No, that was not. Is that what you think is Daniel Cormier's biggest wins? The great Pat Cummings?
Oh, that was great. Yeah, Pat was that was the legit. Hey, I got a story on that. You've probably heard this, but I'll probably give you like a detail or two you didn't know. So just allow me to condescend like you don't know this story. So Daniel Cormier's got an opponent, and it's Rashad Evans, and that fight was never going to.
I lost your audio, Chael.
I told him 100 times. You don't have Rashad. 100 times I told him that fight will not happen. Okay. So the fight falls through. Big surprise. I was already in training for it. I was in training to prepare to fight Daniel Cormier. True story. So I called them. And I had this guy named Ross, but he was real good with the digital work, and we made our own poster. And now guys are doing that all the time. They're dropping the fake poster, which is great. But they got that from me. I did that publicly the first time for Ben Askren. I am the one that put out the artwork of Ben Askren versus Jake Paul. And when that was done, and it was done so well, they're like, well, we got to go with Ben because we've already got it done. I never got credit for it, but that was my move. So I was doing the same thing with the UFC with Ross was helping me. So I actually forwarded to Dana White. I said, hey, I'm glad you're going to make this. I'm going to spread this around. He thought his art department had made it. I almost had the fight with Daniel. Hold this thought because I have a point. So Rashad pulls out. I'm filming the Ultimate Fighter in Brazil. And they're like, look, we are not pulling you out of this thing with Vanderlei to fight with Daniel. Then this story comes out. And don't forget, Fox was a partner back then. So this story comes out that Daniel got bested in a practice room at the Olympic Training Center. And he got bested to the point that he quit the workout and cried. And the person that did that to him was Pat Cummings. This story comes out. So Pat Cummings was not in the UFC. He was a barista. So Dana White calls the store. And the manager, like they could hear her voice. And she goes, no personal phone calls. Ryan Parsons, who was the manager, Dana calls Ryan Parsons. He just got hung up on. Ryan can't get to Pat. So Ryan has to go through the drive-through and order a coffee to get to the window to get Pat to hand him the phone, which is Dana White. Like, this is every fighter's dream, but it's actually happening. It's going down in Pat's life. I don't know if you know that part of the story. I don't know. Most people don't know the drive-through. Dana White says, hey, kid, did you make Daniel Cormier cry in a practice room? And he said, yes. And Dana said, he paused, and Dana goes, can you go on Fox and tell that story? And then the whole thing was contingent if Pat was willing to make this public. And Pat said, yeah, I can go on Fox and tell the story when I get off. And Dana says, Tell your manager, he said right now with me on the phone, he said, take your apron off, throw it down, and tell that manager I quit. I'm in the UFC. And Pat took the apron off, and he's like, hey, Amber, I quit. I'm in the UFC. And he goes outside, and Pat didn't even have a car. He took his bicycle, which is how he got there. He loaded that in Ryan's truck, and they went to the gym. That's that whole story. That's a great, come on, that is a great story.
It is a great story, and he made himself a pretty solid UFC career, so it's amazing he did that out of that moment. Love it. You mentioned, they weren't going to pull you off TUF. We, of course, are here talking to you, Chael, about the Ultimate Fighter 33. I want to ask you this question right off the bat. You know the business. I've heard you say this a million times. If you're setting someone up in this game, there's got to be a payoff. There's got to be a payoff. What is the payoff in you coaching the Ultimate Fighter against Daniel Cormier for the fans, for the sport?
I feel like you blew off that story I told you. Like I
love it.
I felt like I was handing you gold. Like you could break that off and you could put that out and people would like it and interact. I don't even think I don't even think you're like, hey, Chael,
thank you for sharing that wonderful story, Chael. But we're on short time here, so I want to get all my questions in as well.
Inside phone calls with Dana White, nobody talks about those. You do not talk about phone calls you have with the boss. I just broke all of those rules. I did it for you. And you didn't even seem like you enjoyed it. And that's a little bit of what we call a dick move.
I'm sorry, Chael. I really did enjoy it. Patrick Cummins is one of the nicest people.
If you wonder why I keep getting off the topic of The Ultimate Fighter, which airs on ESPN, but you want to know why I keep getting off that? I had a hard time with Wanderlei Silva, and it was with the language barrier. So then I had an interpreter. He had an interpreter, and sometimes they didn't agree. And ultimately, they even subtitled the show. Like communication was a very hard thing.
Yes.
With that said, I think that Wanderlei speaks better English than Daniel. And I'm not saying like there's a literacy issue, but if and I wouldn't call Daniel stupid. I like him a lot. But if stupid had a cousin, it would be Daniel Cormier.
Okay. No love for DC now, and it truly is.
Oh, you just love Daniel. It is so obvious.
I love you both. This is hurting my heart, Chael, but you're building my intrigue.
I thought you did. I thought I was your special guy. I never tell you no, even though you put out a false report that I was part of an exhibition boxing, which I was not. You've never fully apologized. You love Daniel Cormier. Oh my God. It is so obvious whose side you're on. Well, you know what? You're on the wrong side. You're on the losing side. Chael Sonnen has never lost an Ultimate Fighter. They say that I am the only coach to win that thing twice. But there was 3 weight classes contested when I fought. One of them had 2 weight classes. I've won 3 of these tournaments as a coach. Right? The guys did it. But if you're sharing credit, you're trying to bring me on it, which is very sweet. But if you're doing that, you got to tell the story correctly. I am not the most successful coach of all time because I've won it twice. I am the most successful coach of all time because I've won it 3 times, about to be 4.
Why come down from the mountaintop then when you're already there? What's the upside in doing it again? Just keep building and showing you that you are the undisputed GOAT. Just like in the ring.
For the little people, I give back. It's like what you're doing for me right now, right? You're all Mr. Fancy Schmancy with his MMA junkie, and you call the little guy Chael, and you let me have just like this little nugget of your time. I am basically doing the same thing for Daniel.
No, you are doing God's work here, Chael. We always are thankful for any amount of time you can have.
I cannot believe how obvious you are making this, that you are pulling for Daniel. You're not even hiding it.
I don't think so. Daniel hasn't even given me the time of day to talk about the show yet. Here you are. You're giving us plenty of time.
Yeah, you're one of those weird guys. You're the abused wife that's convinced he loves me more. So Daniel won't take your call. Here Chael is. Chael always gives of his time. And therefore, Chael, with you, gets taken for granted. It is so obvious whose side. I am disgusted by the fact that you can't play this interview straight.
I'm playing it straight. Tell me, Chael, what's the payoff of this?
Okay, here's the thing. The Ultimate Fighter can historically, I feel like you're asking me about money. I could be wrong, but that's
no, I just mean in general. We usually see the coaches fight. Connor and Chandler aside, but that's usually what this is built around. It seems like you're having some animosity towards DC now. What's the point of this?
When my mouth starts moving, that's when yours will shut. All right.
I'm going to give you the full screen.
For future, when you see that you do this. Now, the thing with the Ultimate Fighter is historically it's been big paydays. I got my biggest payday. Many people think it's against Anderson Silva. My biggest was actually the ass whipping I took from John Jones, but we had the vehicle of the Ultimate Fighter behind it. And it is such a wildly successful vehicle for marketing. So that's kind of how you get paid as the coach. You go into the fight and then it's a little reciprocal and you kind of figure it out. To go in and coach and not have a fight, we're on the house. This is not a paid gig. I'm going into this 100% because I care about these guys. I care about somebody that has a future and has a dream. And I was one of those guys. And I got lucky that I had an older guy that I could look to, that I could turn to, who helped me to navigate along the way. Randy Tour. But every guy needs another guy, and that other guy's got to be older. It's the way that it works. So if I'm given an opportunity to go in and help a crop of aspiring fighters, I jumped at it. That's just the truth, and that's as plainly as I can speak.
That's absolutely fair. Who will be your assistant coaches this time compared to the previous experiences?
The head coach will be Clayton Hires. Clayton Hires is my coach. He's my mentor. He is not my assistant ever. He will be the boss. I will have on the jersey, Clayton's team will consist of me. It will consist of Cowboy Steve. He's going to do what generally Mike Dolce would do in terms of helping these guys with their weight, their nutrition, their strength and conditioning. I would never do an Ultimate Fighter without bringing the greatest grappler, Vinny Magalhaes. The last man to beat Gordon Ryan, I might add, and he beat Gordon easily. That's just the truth. It was either 7-0 or 7-1. I don't know if you remember that match, but there was a point system. It was not even close. Vinny never got credit for that. Last human being to defeat Gordon Ryan will be our coach, and Colby Covington. Colby is going to come in, and Colby is such a wonderful mentor to people. This is what people don't know about him. But he does all of this on the side. He gives back. He goes to camps. He goes to college wrestling rooms. He goes to the train set, whatever it might be. And he has mentored and coached many people, but Colby doesn't. He doesn't want people knowing like he's a nice guy. So I'm not going to ruin his gimmick, but he is going to do a fantastic job.
No, it is true. I've been down to MMA Masters there and just, had the experience of being in the room, and I've seen how he treats his teammates. So for better or worse, however people want to think of him, that is an undeniable fact. And I saw that at American Top Team as well before things went their separate way there. So Chael,
right? We won't ruin his gimmick. He's got a good thing going, but we just said that's the truth.
Yeah. How's DC going to react losing on this? We know throughout his career he hasn't handled the defeats well. I know that's because his passion is strong and he wants victory so bad. But how will he handle having this over his head for the rest of his life as you guys continue your show and your relationship?
There's not a lot. When I talk to about being candid, there is not a lot a coach in this situation can do. The coach will get credit, and a coach can hurt a guy though. A coach can have a guy where he's not fresh mentally, which is such a battle through this process. A coach can do training thing where he wears the guy down. And you got to understand, it's very hard juxtaposition, and there is actually an art to it. You have a practice time and you have a group of guys, but they don't all need the same thing. One of them has a weigh-in in 7 days and he's 6 pounds over, and you got to come up with a game plan for that opponent. One of them. But one of them is going to weigh in today and fight tomorrow. But you got to train them at the same time using each other as partners. I mean, not for nothing, I have seen coaches that are very guilty of grinding the guys up. I've seen them wear these guys down. They have a 2-hour practice time, so they take all 2 hours, thinking they're going to cram like it's a test for school, as opposed to understanding. Some guys an hour and 20 in, call it. Send them to the shower. Some other guys stick around. Some guys go talk to Vinny about a specific division. Other guys come over here. Me and Clayton need a word with you. And that is one thing that historically my teams have done better than anybody. It's one thing that we'll do here. Daniel will have a very good team, but Mike, how the sausage is made. Daniel, and it's a noble thing to do, is a coach of a high school in Gilroy. And he's the real coach. He's not just the coach of record. He's in there with those guys every day. The wrestling season is going on at the same time as the Ultimate Fighter. So Daniel has given his word to a group of young men in Gilroy that he will train them. And now he has given his word to a group of young men in Las Vegas that he will train them. Not for nothing, something has to give. On Chael P's end, I would never miss a practice.
Last thing on the Ultimate Fighter, then I have a few other things for you. What do you think is the appeal for a young fighter to come on?
You don't have to telegraph it. Did somebody tell you this in like your PR training? You don't have to say last thing and then two more things over here. Like, we don't need to do it like we're numbering it. These aren't chores. Let's just have a conversation. Talk about whatever.
I always like to. I just don't know if you're on a short time or if I need to get you out of here soon. I know a lot of people want to talk to you today.
I am always busy, and I would never cut you off. Never have, and I never will.
Well, I very appreciate that. What do you think is the appeal for a fighter to come on the Ultimate Fighter now? When Dana White's Contender Series is there, you can get in on one win. I know the coaches and the experience, I'm sure, as you kind of say, but you know, like there's an easier path into the UFC now. So do you think the Ultimate Fighter carries the same weight?
Brother, what an interesting question, because Dana White has created the Ultimate Fighter. That is what that is his baby. That is what got him to the home that he lives in right now. He comes in and cannibalizes his own product with perhaps a higher rated product. Yep. Why wouldn't he do it? Everyone's chasing Dana, trying to beat him. He comes in and offers the biggest threat to himself from himself. And I think that you make a great point. You go through the Contender Series. You're not guaranteed it, though. The Contender Series is wonderful. And I could go back to Bohn, who won it but had to come win it again. I could come back there to Austin Vanderford, who won it, but the fight was closer than some of the other ones on the night. He didn't get a contract. And plenty of guys like that, and that's very tough to see. So that's where the politics come in. Do you have the right manager? Did you get the right matchup? Did you bring the right attention to your fight prior to the fight? And nobody thinks, like even Dana, he doesn't think that he's thinking about any of those things, but he's a human being. He and Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard and Hunter, of course they're thinking about those things. On the Ultimate Fighter, the best man stands. One thing that I do not like about our sport, we got into something known as the entertainment area, and you could get some scumbag that's good with a microphone, and all of a sudden he can talk himself into an opportunity. I've seen dirtbags talk themselves into world title shots. On the Ultimate Fighter, you will stand or you will fail on your achievement. If you win in a straight line bracket, you could be the biggest star like Kimbo Slice. You're out on round one. You could be the best fighter in the world like TJ Dillashaw. If you can't put it all together, not going to work out. But if you can, no matter who your manager is, no matter how good you are with the words, you will be champion and you will be recognized for it.
I love that. Chael, there's a lot of talk going around.
I love that. That was nowhere near the story that I told you about the barista that threw the paper down and walked out.
I want a better story from you, Chael.
You didn't say anything about that story.
I want a better story from you. A lot of people wondering this fight you had in April 2004 against Justin Bailey in Rage in the Cage, where you won by 40-second flying knee knockouts. We can't find the footage anywhere. Can you tell me the story of this fight as you dance?
Can you see me?
Yes.
All right, hold on. You're gonna have to talk loudly. Can you see me right now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So Justin Bailey turned out to be a great guy. We hung out after that, and I really like Justin Bailey, but for that night, this was a tournament. So I got to beat two guys, and it was a 4-man tournament. You know, they went from 8, and guys weren't tough enough to fight 3. So then they shortened it down to 4. So guys would fight. But this is a tournament. This is one of the last tournaments. I won 2 tournaments, by the way. I'm very proud of that, because beating multiple people in one night, that's a tough guy move. Justin Bailey. I had envisioned this. You see I'm faking you right now? You see I'm faking you? You see I'm faking? You don't know where I'm going to go, right? You don't know where I'm going to go. So I had envisioned that I'm going to fake. I'm going to fake like it's a shot. I'm going to fake and come up with a knee. And I never practiced it. There's some moves that you can't practice. John Jones will go out there and throw these elbows, and I'm so impressed because you can't practice that. You cannot throw an elbow to the face in sparring. You would be the world's worst partner. Same thing with flying knees. So I'd only envisioned it. Nobody knew that I was even thinking of doing this, but I was just sure that it would work. And sure, I got him in the corner, and I faked elevation. I came up with a knee, and I still remember when he went down, because I was so surprised. Like, I was getting ready to swing. I thought he would still be there, but he was under me because the knee had worked. That's the story.
Is that the cleanest knockout you got in your career? Where's the footage of it? It's so frustrating. You can't find it.
I think it's the only. And you know what? Now that you say it, I have seen that, though. But I think I saw that off of somebody's phone. Okay. I think you're right. I think maybe there's no footage. That was actually the semifinals. That drew me into Tim McKenzie. And I bring up Tim. He came through the Ultimate Fighter. Tim was a stud. And Tim had the big mohawk, and he had a great UFC career 5, 6, 7 times. It drew me into Tim, but Tim was so banged up from the semifinals that he had to forfeit. He had to forfeit in the championship match, and they tried to bring somebody else in. And I was in the back, like, I'm going to have to do it. You know, they were paying $3,000 for this tournament, which was, nobody made that much money. Like, this is I drove there with a car full of guys. Like, I really needed that $3,000. But I remember thinking, this is a tournament. A forfeit is a fair win. If a guy can't make the walk, I win. And so they talked about bringing Justin Bailey back out. They thought about having us rematch. The commission got us, no, we can't do that when a guy's knocked out. And then they were just going to bring this fresh guy in. And I didn't say one word. I sat in the back, and I would have walked out there whenever it was time. But ultimately, they did the right thing, which is they gave – I mean, it's a tournament. If somebody doesn't show, you win. That's how I won that tournament.
Did they pay you for as if you fought twice, or did it not matter? Was it like a flat rate for the whole night?
$3,000. And the promoter – he gave me my money, and then before I could get – so there's always – everybody pays the same, which is the table. They throw your money down, and you pick it up. When you pick it up, you got a deal. You cannot turn away from the table and come back and say I was short. He counted the money, and I remember thinking, that's a little bit light. Like, it was the deal. The deal was $3,000, but he had a sold-out house here. I'm willing to fight twice. It was a really hard tournament. They didn't get the hotel that they promised me. I ended up having to go get my own room. I thought you could put a little something on it. You may have $3,500. That's not reasonable by me. This is just, but I was kind of thinking at the time, I wouldn't be surprised if he put a little cheddar on it. He not only didn't, before I could pick it up, he brings his hand down, he picks it up, and then he recounts it out because he thought like maybe 100 stuck together, and then he'd accidentally given me 3,100. And I've never forgot that moment. I've been a cheapskate before in my life. My ego would never let me do a move like that. If I overpaid somebody, it's now their money.
Yep. I mean, you say they put the money down, you can't turn away once you pick it up. That sounds like these GFL contracts they're signing people to. They say, once you sign them for this money, you have to fight anyone on our roster that we tell you to.
Isn't that great? I mean, isn't that great? Isn't it disappointing that somewhere a guy has to be told that? I mean, the whole reason you do a contract is because you don't have time to do contracts. Like a promoter's going to sign his life away and then later try to find out the funding and make everything catch up. Like a promoter that signs deals is putting himself up against it. He's got to have enough events. Everybody's got to play a venue game because they don't own them. Then you got to go to your distribution partners. Then you're going to try to find a sponsorship. You got to pop the popcorn, sell the cups of beer, and get some tickets going in between. It is such a difficult thing. So a promoter signs 5 and 6 deals because I don't want to talk to you, okay? The reason I'm signing a 6-fight deal with you, dum-dum, because I don't want to talk to you again. I don't have time. I literally don't have enough hours in the day to sit down for every fight that I make. In case you're not paying attention, the UFC puts on 11 fights a week. They do not have time to have 22 meetings a week. It's outrageous. When Francis Ngannou comes out and he's complaining that he can't get a meeting, he shouldn't have got a meeting. When Conor McGregor says, well, you need to call me, we don't have anything to talk about. We had the talk. Whatever question you have, go look at your contract. So when the GFL has to come out and tell these guys, this is the deal. Now we've got a heavyweight champion of the world, by the way, who wants to sit down and renegotiate before he goes into his next fight. It's like, we don't need to do that. And if we do that, I'm just going to read the contract to you that you've already signed. All of these guys celebrate. All of these guys that do a deal, and we're talking GFL, but I'm comparing Dana. All the guys that get a meeting with Dana, all the guys that do a deal celebrate. 100% of them, the first time they sign a deal, they're putting it out on Instagram. They got, oh my God, the smile on their face. And then pretty soon, particularly if they have success, if the UFC has success in promoting these guys, the thing that they claim they've always wanted, then these guys want to turn the gun on them. And believe it or not, it's not the money that's the bigger problem. It's the principle and the time. I don't have a hard time giving you another $100,000. What I have a hard time doing is taking the call, listening to your reason, juxtaposing it against reality, and then giving you the $100,000. It's a time issue. And it will be a very bad precedence if that changes. If you're under contract, you compete with anybody, anyone, anytime, anywhere. And the only club that believes in that is Khabib and the boys. Everybody out there is a bunch of fake tough guys. The only real tough guys are the guys that honor a contract, and they never speak about it until the contract's up and it's time to speak about it. So the fact that the GFL, one thing the GFL is going to find out, there is no group of fake tough guys quite like MMA. You can hurt an MMA guy's feelings by something you say on Twitter. You could get a world champion in MMA to fly across the country and fight you because you said something on social media. They are the biggest group of fake tough guys. Meanwhile, Shaquille O'Neal. Meanwhile, Tom Brady. On any given Sunday, will step on the field against whoever in the hell else steps out against them. They don't start trying to renegotiate because this game's going to be bigger, or they don't start trying to renegotiate because the starting player's not in and backup's coming in and he's a rookie and I'm not familiar with him. Let me go sit down with some tape and study with my coaches and I'll call my people and have them call you. You can't get anything done. To be able to move business forward, you got to be able to put down the goddamn phone. And all these fighters that want to talk to somebody, shove it up your ass. You don't deserve a phone call.
Did they make a phone call to you to try to get you to either be part of the organization or fight? I feel like they hit up every single person. I'm shocked, Chael. You've been part of everyone out there. Did they try to get you?
Please. Did they try to get Chael Sonnen? They are still trying to get Chael Sonnen. It would be irresponsible. Like, I don't mind when those phone calls come in. No matter if I already know ahead of time where they're not going to go. Yeah. What I would mind is if that phone call wasn't placed. That would be a very irresponsible thing to sign the people they're signing to do what they're trying to do and to not call Chael Sonnen. Of course they called.
But you're not interested.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to fight. Now, it isn't because I look at that roster and don't see some names that pop off the page like, man, I'd really like to fight that guy. In my career, I felt like my career will never be complete until I fight Wanderlei Silva and I fight Vitor Belfort. And I don't know why. Mm-hmm. Vitor is the only name left. I don't have a problem with Vitor. By the way, it's just when I was coming up and I was imagining what my career was going to look like, and I'm up at 5 a.m. and I'm running, and I got to picture something. Vitor was always across from me. And there is some point, though, Mike, before you think there's a call out of Vitor, I'm using that to set the stage for, there's a point where it's weird. There's a point where if you're a cage fighter, that's cool. Your friends will think it's cool. Your classmates at a reunion will think it's cool. The guy down at the coffee shop might whisper and tell somebody else. There's another point where you should not be taking your T-shirt off, putting in a mouthpiece, and standing in front of the world. I had to leave the sport of amateur wrestling. I had aspirations of winning the Olympics and making an Olympic team. I had to stop, and I was in the prime of my life. I fought for 3 UFC World Championships after I stopped wrestling, and wrestling was my true love. But the reason I stopped, a 30-year-old should not be trying to pin a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old. It was weird. And I've seen some guys, a lot of relics, but they were 40 and they were 42. And I would watch them fight and go, what are you doing? Like, there's nothing cool about that. This is weird. And I believe that I have entered the phase where it would be weird. So no, I am not going to fight.
I appreciate that. You seem to be so successful and happy in life and everything you're doing outside of the cage. You're one of the main voices of our sport, Chael. Yes. So, I think you just keep killing it and doing what you're doing. Want to ask, obviously middleweight division was yours for so long, fought for that belt many times. This is a massive month for middleweight coming up, right? Like we got this weekend, Shara Bullet and MVP, Izzy versus Imavov. Next weekend, the title fight, DDP and Strickland. The weekend after that, Gregory Rodriguez and Jared Cannonier. The week after that, Brendan Allen and Fluffy Hernandez.
You've made your point. Wrap it up. Yeah.
Okay.
A bunch of middleweights are going to fight. Okay, wrap it up.
How different is the division going to look after this? And I guess going off the title fight, what's going to be the biggest fight to be made? I guess whether Sean wins or Drickus keeps it.
It's one of the most exciting divisions right now. And it wasn't always like when Anderson was there, he was such a big star, but he whipped everybody's ass. I mean, there was nothing to see. John Jones did that at 205 to where you couldn't even sell out an arena. because of his greatness. Roy Jones had to live through this throughout all of the 90s. The greatest boxer of a decade. You probably couldn't tell me a single fight that he had. Like, it's just one of those things where you got to have the right guys. When you look at 185 pounds right now, we have the right guys. If you ever have a division where potentially your best guy doesn't have the belt, you got a really good division. I mean, if you did a popular poll, there's only one way to figure out who the best guy is, which is the hard way in the octagon. But if you did a popular poll and asked people, do you believe anybody can beat Khamzat Chimaev? It's probably going to come back with a no. And so we're talking about world title fights between Strickland and DDP, which is 100% the right fight to book. But there is a chance that the best middleweight isn't part of that fight. Now, that's a good problem to have. You couldn't tell me 3 guys at 155 that you want to see fight Islam Makhachev. You just couldn't do it. So when you have these divisions that still got parity and they still got rivalry and they still got heat and they got all this excitement. I'm talking about 185 pounds and you just listed off a bunch. We didn't even mention the undefeated Bo Nickel. There aren't a lot of people out there that believe somebody can beat Bo Nickel. Like 185 pounds is the division right now. That changes back and forth, but it has never had a more beautiful spotlight put on it.
Yeah, Kyle Baralho is a killer as well out there. There's a lot of really good guys.
Keep plugging all your friends.
All my friends. I don't know if I've ever met Kyle.
Yes, for Daniel Cormier. No, get it all. Kyle Baralho.
Do you think Islam Makhachev could do anything at 185? Dana literally just did a press conference at Power Slap, and he said like 185 is crazy.
He's so great. 185 pounds is just.
Could Islam Makhachev do anything at 185?
Who's paying you to put over 185 pounds? I'm the greatest 85-pounder ever, which arguably might be true. I was absolutely.
So aren't you the man to come to?
No, but I'm just saying, even I haven't swung on the proverbial jock of the middle as much as you are right now. When you bring up Islam,
you're headlining 3 straight shows.
Islam's in a fascinatingly difficult spot. Here's the one thing that we've never done. We as a community have never even considered, before we make a decision at 155 or a decision with the title or a decision at your main event or a decision with Islam, we as a community, and with no exception, have never turned to Islam and said, what would you like to do? We have never taken his opinion into. Do you know how badly he would not want to have fought Moicano? Do you understand there was one thing that Islam could do, which was to win by finish in the first round? Anything less than that he would not be number 1 over John Jones right now. If that fight went to the second round, if he got punched one time on his way in, even if he ate it and went through it, he had one thing that had to happen, and he had less than 24 hours to get his mind right to make it happen. That was awesome. And Islam deserves that credit. He deserves that bounce. And he moved in the rank. He moved from 2 to 1 in the rankings of pound for pound. But I'll just share with you. Islam's got to talk about Pierre at 205, and he's got to talk about Dricus at 185. And that's weird, and that's not anything that anybody will take serious. But he has to do that because his friend has the belt at 170. And there's really no teams out there. There's just guys that say they belong to a team, and that includes the NFL and NBA. Those guys are whores. You put down a bigger check than somebody else, they'll put your jersey on. The only team, real team, is Khabib's. And they have a code, and they have an honor, and that you're just not going to see a fight with Islam and Blahal. But the number one thing that Islam wants, and the number one reason he keeps bringing things like this up, it's not a challenge. It's not a new world title. He wants out of the weight class. The biggest problem Islam has is the thing that beat his coach twice and ultimately retired. Khabib did not retire because he didn't want to fight Conor a second time. The UFC showed him the wrong numbers. Every time they had a meeting, they showed a bit more commas and more zeros. That was the wrong number. If they would have made the weight class 170, they would have got Khabib for one more fight. And they're going to run into that same problem with Islam eventually. He doesn't, and the number one reason a combat athlete retires, they tell you it's because their contract's up. They tell you because they've had enough. They tell you because it's too old. The number one reason any combat athlete retires, they don't want to make that weight anymore. They don't want to beat the scale. Everything that goes into that is a 24/7 lifestyle to get those calories off and to beat that damn scale. And sooner or later, it bites everybody in the ass. And Islam can either retire like Khabib did. Khabib didn't want to tell anybody, I don't want to make the weight. No combat athlete will ever tell you that, but it's the truth. So they can either eventually part ways with Islam and watch him retire and talk about what could have been, or they can move him out of the goddamn weight class. That's the truth.
Last thing, Chael, because and this is kind of a sensitive one. I know you've been on calls for a while here, and
you cannot get that kind of analysis.
It was great. I love that.
That was the best analysis anybody. That is the number one reason that people retire. Just so you know, we have lost many of our heroes, including Khabib, and even the UFC didn't understand why, because of beating that goddamn scale. And so when Islam keeps telling you he wants out of the way, he said it 20 times now. It's not that he's tired of these guys or he's tired of defending. He doesn't want to weigh 155. And I just think that somebody somewhere needs to listen to what he's actually saying. And so because they haven't been able to interpret it, I just did it for him.
We got the fight night weights from California. He was lighter than Moicano, but is 178 on fight night. Like, does that still show you that he should probably be up a weight class?
Yeah. Now, this is a personal belief, and I say this as a coach. And it's a broad stroke. I don't ever believe when you start cutting weight, I don't ever believe in passing up a weight class. So if you weigh 178 pounds, go ahead and cut weight. But you're going to go to the nearest weight class, which in this case is 170. You don't cut weight, pass a weight class, and go all the way down to another one. Not unless you want your career to be relatively short in comparison to what it could have been. So that's my personal opinion. When I coach kids, whatever they weigh, it's just the wrestler's way. They're going to put the plastics and they're going to run out. They're going to spit into a cup. All these things that wrestlers do, fine. It's part of the lifestyle. And if you want to do that to get to the next nearest weight class, great. But you don't cut your way past a weight class. And I hope that makes sense to you.
I know you've been doing interviews for a while here, Chael, so
Let's say you get a fact. Well, let's say your favorite fighter, Daniel Cormier. Not for nothing. He had an extra couple pounds that he could have given up. So there is a reason where maybe you trim a guy up. But that's the broad stroke. Like, it's not a perfect rule. But when you look at somebody like Islam, there's no fat on the bone. No. He trains every day. He doesn't drink. He lives the lifestyle. That's a very healthy man, is my point. To take a healthy man and have him cut past the weight class and down to the other one, it's a mistake. And whether that's on the contract, the manager, or his own coach, it's a mistake.
Chael, the biggest news of today has been the situation with Bryce Mitchell. And I don't know how much you've been able to catch because I know you've been doing interviews. Dana has spoke on it now. His comments about Hitler that he did on his podcast. They are not going to release him. I will give you an out if you don't feel comfortable or caught up to speak on this. But do you feel like the UFC should have made a punishment for Bryce Mitchell instead of, calling him a moron and saying free speech and then ending it at that?
I know absolutely nothing about it, and I'm not performing for you. I mean, absolutely nothing. But with that said, I feel, and I bet you I'm right, I feel like I know everything based on what you just said. I feel like I know all of it. And good for the UFC that you don't want to, but you got to handle it. So if they came out and they're doing anything, or if even there's a few words that just don't work. There's I have this talk with my children. There's a few words that don't work. One of them starts with the letter N. Another one of them starts with the letter F. And you can't do Nazi and Hitler. You just can't. You can't make those comparisons. You can't praise. I put somebody down in college. I was insulting a bad person, and I used the word Nazi. Somehow I made a comparison and like the Nazis. That professor kept me after class, and he said, "Do you know who they are?" I said, "Yeah." And he was against the guy that I was scolding. I was on the right side of this. I was right to look. And the professor agreed. He said, "You don't ever compare anybody to them. You don't ever try to tell me that somebody's bad and compare them to that, because nobody's that." And it changed me. And if Bryce has never had that talk like I had, and he's getting it right now from the UFC, I will bet you, much like me, he will learn from it.
Yeah, it sounds like Dana and him had a talk. Dana, I'm sure you'll see the clip, any minute now, where he just basically said he's one of the dumbest people I've ever met, and that's one of the dumbest things you can possibly say. But they're not going to give him a punishment in terms of like a release or anything like that. So
well, okay, but please understand. Please understand. There is a checks and balances for these guys that run their mouth or say something bad or say something that's really offensive. There's no passes. And everybody just turns to, well, can you release the guys? There's other things you can do. There's a checks and balances. Mark my words. He's having whatever else from whatever sponsors he's got. He doesn't have them anymore. In a best case scenario, they all got frozen. In a best case scenario. Now the audience is going to look at him different. Those things don't go away. To pretend that there's not a punishment is not true. Do you need Big Brother to come in and hand him the ultimate axe? That's a different conversation. There's different levels to things. I mean, there's criminals out there, but some of them jaywalked. And some of them robbed a bank. There's different levels, but there are checks and balances for all of them. So please, let's not pretend that Bryce got away with something here. He most definitely did not.
Yeah, that is a reasonable reaction for sure, Chael. I feel like you've got a whole workout in, pacing around the house, so I feel like I need to go get my own work in now, Chael. I know you got some other people to talk to, so I really appreciate the time. And I had a question for you off air, if you mind hanging around instead of giving me the classic hang up.
No, I love it. I love it. I'll stick around. And it was very nice talking to you. I know that you were basically a dick to me this whole interview, but I don't hold you to that standard. Like, I know what the culture over there at MMA Junkie, and I get the whole, you get a full pass.
Okay, thank you.